Okay, I will move on. I want to move to Ethiopia. So, Minister, the Australian government has supported the human rights investigation that's being undertaken with the Ethiopian government's Human Rights Commission.
Can we just wait for the official to come to the table, Senator?
Okay.
We went through. Sorry if I can assist. We went through Ethiopia and issues there quite in detail, Senator Rice, but...
okay, so if my questions have been covered, please let me know.
And Mr Hayes could do it that way. Thank you.
Great. So I want to go to that investigation with the Ethiopian government's Human Rights Commission and the issue that the Ethiopian government figures have been clearly implicated in the human rights violations and been subjected to targeted sanctions by the US. So I want to know whether Australia still supports that investigation.
Senator Benjamin Hayes, Acting First Assistant Secretary, Middle East and Africa Division. I'm sorry, I just want to clarify, Senator, are you referring to, and we did have some discussion on this yesterday, the decision by the United States to issue visa restrictions in relation to a number of current and former Ethiopian?
Yes, that was part of my question, that there are targeted sanctions now by the US of members of the government's. I mean, basically, it's the Ethiopian government's Human Rights Commission. It's not an independent investigation.
So, Senator, we have limited information about that, but I don't think it's US sanctions, it's visa restrictions. And the discussion we had yesterday in response to some questions from Senator Wong, I provided evidence that at this time Australia wasn't taking any subsequent action in relation to what the US had done.
My question, though, is our support and whether we are still expressing support for the Ethiopian government's Human Rights Commission investigation.
Okay, sorry, Senator. Yes, so Senator, we have welcomed the joint inquiry into the Tigray conflict by both the UN Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission.
Because certainly members of the Tigrayan and other communities here in Australia are very concerned about that there isn't independence of the Ethiopian Government Human Rights Commission inquiry, and they want to see a genuinely independent investigation led by the UN. So, I mean, is the government backing the call for that independent investigation?
Well, Senator, as I said, we certainly back the joint inquiry by the UN Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. I'm not sure...
No, but that's the joint inquiry. It's actually having something that's fully independent of the Ethiopian government.
Yes, we haven't called for an independent inquiry that doesn't involve the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission.
Will the government consider calling for an inquiry that doesn't involve the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission?
I'll take that on notice, Senator.
Australia has committed $3 million to the World Food Programme assistance in Ethiopia. The UK's Special Envoy on Famine Prevention and Humanitarian Affairs has said there's a very serious risk of famine. I mean, will Australia commit more than that $3 million?
Senator, at this stage, that's the government's commitment. In terms of the issue of famine, and my colleague Mr Gilling is joining us at the table and may wish to make some further comments, but of course we're very aware of the significance of the famine risk in Ethiopia. But I'll hand over to Mr Gilling.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Senator. James Gilling, a humanitarian coordinator. Senator, as we mentioned at the last estimates, the $3 million was a direct payment to the World Food Programme, which is expressly for Ethiopia. Beyond that, Senator, we also provide core funding for the UN Central Emergency Response Fund and for the UN Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. So while we don't have dedicated funds, in addition to the $3 million going to Ethiopia, we do have systems within our support for the UN bodies to support the issue of Ethiopian famine.
Do you have any estimate of how much of that extra support is actually going to Ethiopia?
I don't have them with me, Senator, but I can assure you that We talk regularly with the UN bodies to ensure that the distribution of those funds goes to the highest need, and Ethiopia would be one of them, Senator.
Senator, I might also ask Mr Gilling to talk about some of the challenges in relation to access and actually getting the supplies to those who need them most. This is a very significant challenge.
We take that on notice. Yeah, I acknowledge that certainly in places like Ethiopia there are challenges. I'd be interested to know that, but I know that I've got limited time this morning.
Certainly, Senator. Only trying to be helpful.
Thank you. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs estimates that there's $197 million that's needed between May and July to address the humanitarian crisis. If Australia just funded 1% of that, which in terms of our position in the world you'd think would be not unreasonable, it would be just about doubling our current commitment. And basically, we should be doing more. And the number of representations I have received from people of Ethiopian background who say they're desperate for the Australian government to be stepping up, particularly because of our diaspora community here and our business links in Ethiopia. And will the government commit to, to double the amount that we are currently giving, or go further?
Well, Senator, I can assure you that we keep a number of those situations across the world, and you're right to point out Ethiopia, but there are many others in the region, and we're constantly appraising how best to allocate our funds to address those issues, Senator.
So there's no commitment, despite, as I said, 1% of that 197 million would require us to double our existing commitment.
I can't give that commitment, Minister. Senator.
Does the department have any estimates of the number of Australians trapped in Tigray?
Senator, in my evidence yesterday in response to Senator Wong's questions, I noted that around 80 Australian citizens and permanent residents were in Tigray when the conflict began, and around 20 remain.
Okay. And look, I'll have a read of the evidence that you provided yesterday and further information about that then. As well as violations of human rights in Tigray, Ethiopian security forces have been clearly implicated in human rights violations in the Oromia region. Has Australia raised these issues with the Ethiopian government?
Senator, Australia remains concerned about incidents of violence and reports of human rights abuses in other regions of Ethiopia, including Oromia, Benishangul Gumuz and Amhara. We are closely monitoring events in view of the upcoming elections and will continue to advocate for an end to violence and for dialogue and democratic processes that are inclusive of all political groups.
So you're saying you're advocating. So what representations have been made to the Ethiopian government about these human rights violations?
Senator, we've made extensive representations with the Ethiopian government since approximately November last year, both in Addis Ababa and also in Canberra.
This evidence was placed on the record yesterday as well, Senator, so we can add to that, or...?
Thank you. That's okay. I'll go back to that evidence yesterday. And has that include raising the detention of political prisoners from Oromo opposition groups?
Senator, I'd have to take on notice whether that specific issue, as narrowly defined as you've articulated it, was included.